Right, so carrying out another lawn renovation, and this one really, it suffered with the heat a couple of years ago, and upon inspection we noticed that there's not much soil in there at all. There's like hardcore underneath. So what you can see are patches underneath. You see all the patches there. That's just literally where the soil's not very good. The customer's quite happy just to do a standard renovation and see how it goes, because he did admit he didn't water enough. So we're just doing a standard renovation and we're going to see how it goes. Ordinarily you'd be wanting to take some of that hardcore out and get some topsoil in, so you've got at least 3 inches topsoil, ideally 4, 5, 6 inches really. When you've mowed, put it back on a high setting. Give it a tiny shake and then get your fingers and just scrape any grass off the wheels, because again that goes on the paths. And all this has dropped out from underneath. There's nothing worse when you're going from here back to your van and all the grass comes out on the path. Too bad. See now, nothing's coming out from underneath, you see? That's nice and clean, pretty much. So this is my Still RL540 scarifier. Now Still brought out the Viking brand a few years ago and they were all green. So I bought into it. I've had 2 green 540 scarifiers. And it was the MB 540, it's now the RL 540. It's ever so simple, just an engine, 6 height adjustments. So you've got a height adjustment on the handle there, 1 being the highest and the least aggressive, all the way down to 6, which will tear little fields into your lawn. Now this handle lowers the blade. You slide it across and down, and you can see the whole machine going down to ground level. You can see there, it's already cut grooves in, so the setting's not too bad. But where it's thicker, we may need to drop it down a bit. But this, on the one setting, is actually taking thatch out and it's cutting grooves into the soil, and that's where those little seeds are going to be nestled in. You can see lots of moss was coming out there, and that was on the highest setting. There's still a considerable amount of moss left, so we do need to try and get some more of that out. In other areas it's taking it out and you can still see the grooves in the soil. but the areas that had problems with drought, they haven't been touched. So we've got a couple of options. We either go over the whole lawn again with the scarifier on the next setting down and see if it starts cutting into those areas and raking, or all of these little areas we rake by hand. Now I'm going to go over again on the next setting down because there's still quite a lot of moss to come out of that. So what other ways can you scarify if you don't have access to expensive machines? Well, let me just grab these other tools. You can scarify yourself with a metal rake, again Bulldog brand, and these are fixed with that metal bar there, and it stops these from flapping about, and you need that sort of rigidity and strength when you are raking your lawn hard, that you literally just and that is it. So you are raking down to soil level and you are putting grooves into the soil. You can go one step further with these Wolfgarten with the interchangeable heads, wooden handles, and you can change. There's lots of different attachments what they do, and that pivots and it's removable. 10-year guarantee on these. So you have the rake, which is the slowest and the best physical workout, but you can do a lawn with that, and I did years ago when I first started. The Wolfgarten is just the same but a bit more aggressive, and it's got these metal blades on which are very similar to the Scarifying machine. So this is like a manual version of the machine. So you can start there, and then you could upgrade to this, and then you could upgrade to a scarifier. These are about £500. You don't have to pay for these. You can go even higher and get brands like Camon, a couple of £1,000. You can even go to Screwfix and they do electrical ones. I think Aldi or Lidl, they do ones £70, something like that. So with this, you pull, but you can go forwards and you can rock it backwards and forwards, just nice and light in your hand. Just keep raking. That is physical, but it's less physical than the metal rake. So how much would you take out? Well, what you need is to see soil. Now in the shade there's more moss than anything, but in the rest of the garden it's nice normal healthy grass, and you can see the lines running up and down here. This has been scarified quite well. As long as you can see soil and you've thinned it out, you are improving your lawn. You are removing some of that thatch, you are raking some of it out. If you just left it at that and packed your tools away and went, that would recover in about 6 weeks, as long as you keep it watered, and that would come back nice. But the areas where there are moss and the areas where it is bare, you will need to put some seed in those areas. So you've got to get as much moss out as you can, and the areas where they are bare and them little spots, you've got to rake those hard so the soil is nice and fluffy to accept the seeds. So I've actually dropped down onto number 2 setting, and you can see now it's cutting really deep grooves into the soil, which is absolutely perfect. But we've still got that moss. Although we have thinned it, we're going to try and tease a bit more out. If we can't get in with the machine, then we'll tease a bit of that out by hand. there's still quite a bit of moss up here. So I'm going up this left hand side and I'm working backwards and forwards, and then I'm also coming across on an angle, and I would say 80-90% of it's coming out. So then 80-90% of it is bare soil, which is absolutely fine because we're going to be putting seeds down. Get them out of the way. So you might be wondering, when do you stop scarifying? How much do you take out? Well, if it's done regular, you can just do gentle scarifies 2 or 3 times a year and just keep teasing out any thatch. Even more often if you want to. But you don't need to go heavy. Try to rake out as much moss as possible. It's nearly all soil. I've got to go over with the mower in a second just to tidy this up. And then I'm just going to have one little look round. Them little bare spots there, I'm just going to give those a little rake because we've still got them. They're not really sort of churned up enough, raked enough to get a good seed bed. So let's crack on with that. So Holotine aeration is just a form of aeration, and aeration means punching a hole in the ground. You can aerate with a garden fork, just push it down as deep as you can, maybe 3 to 6 inches. If it's hard ground, then saturate it first and then you'll be able to push it down deeper. If you're going to buy a Holotine aerator, a manual one that you push in, it looks like a fork but it's got the hollow cores on the bottom. Don't go for the cheap ones, which are £20–30. They are absolute rubbish. They get clogged up all the time. You need the ones that have got a little hole halfway up the side of the core remover, and it allows the core to eject. we've aerated and we've raked them into piles. Try to blow first. When you rake, you're raking, some of the cores will break down as you are raking with the rake, and that soil will go down the holes. So if you can see here where we've raked around it, the holes aren't as noticeable, but you go to an area that I've blown, you can see the holes better. So they are there ready for the seeds to drop in. So where we've blown, it's much easier to see the holes. So I always try and blow as much as I can, and then I'll go over with the mower at the end just to try and suck out any last few bits, so we've got a really good seed bed. So we'll get these cleared up and then we'll start the overseeding. So we have scarified and we have aerated, and we've cleared up the cores and we've gone over with the mower. We've continuously tidied up as we've gone, so there's no stains or muck on the pathways, and that is really important. And it actually looks okay, and the bulk of that would recover if we did nothing else. In time, with plenty of water and mowing on a high setting, in a few months that will be back to nice. But we want to get some new seeds in, and obviously with the patches that we've got over there as well. But we can now see all the aeration holes quite a bit better. It's not perfect, but it is better. So what I'm going to do now, some of these little dips, I'm just going to fill in with a bit of topsoil just to get them levelled up a little bit. And then we'll start the overseeding. But even going over with mower, we've got some stuff there in the bottom of the box. So it's worth it. We don't want that sat on the top of the lawn once we've just got it all nicely prepped. Little handy spreader here, turn the handle and it flicks out of there on this little wheel here. You've got an adjuster on the side from 1 to 5. I tend to go on anywhere between 3 and 4 typically. 3 is good when you don't want it too heavy, especially on new lawns. And you just go at a walking pace. So I often get asked, how do you overseed a lawn? So you've got to do some sort of preparation. You can't just chuck seed on. If you just throw seed on the ground, most of it won't germinate because it's got to touch soil, and then it's got to be firmed in, and then it's got to be covered so that the birds don't get to it and it doesn't blow away with the wind or any heavy rain. So there's many ways you can overseed. We're just using the Scarifying clean cut seed. And it's called a sports overseed variety. Okay, you can overseed by hand, and I did it like this for years, never had any problems. A handful or two and just shake. Now you don't want to go in too heavy. You can go over more times and get the right sort of coverage by going over multiple times. You can also use your little spreader, but I find that these struggle if the seed are light and you don't get a lot coming out. Open it on the highest setting, which is number 5. Pull the handle and turn. It is coming out. For me, it's not always consistent though, it depends on the seed, and if it's quite windy as well, it's going to blow some around. Now when it's a little windy, or most of the time, I prefer to use these Scots. It's just a standard evergreen drop spreader. It's got a hopper in there, a little cogged wheel turns around and moves the seed to the bottom, and you've got a row of holes in the bottom there. And when we pull the handle at the top, I don't know if you can see that, but you can see them opening and they drop seeds on the ground. These are, I don't know, £20, something like that. They're inexpensive. I'll try and leave some links to all of these things below, but I prefer this. You know where it's going as well. So let's get on with this. More of it on there. So once you've bought it and you've assembled it, you have a dial you turn here, and that will increase the numbers on here. I think the highest is 9 or 10 or something like that. I've just gone as far as it goes, which is higher than 9 for the biggest setting, and then I'll go over once, and often I'll go over a second time to get the desired coverage. So that works for me. Now we don't want to get too many of these seeds on the lawn in a clump, because if they all clump together, they're all competing for that one space. And remember, each seed is a plant. So that's okay. I'll give that a blow in a sec. And I'm just going to go around the garden now, pulling the trigger. You see it come out the bottom, and I'm just going to walk round a couple of times. So I've gone over twice, I've gone over a bit heavy down that side. I'm just going to go over now and have a look for any areas that don't look quite full that I'm happy with, and then we're ready to top dress. So it is quite windy, you can probably hear that. So I'm going to cover these little spots with topsoil just for a bit of extra weight. I don't want these blowing away. Sprinkle a bit, firm it down. Right, so we're going to do the top dressing, basically just putting a layer of compost over the top, a nice thin layer, worked in and worked down, so some of the compost goes down the holes, improving the soil, and the rest will stay on the surface, nestled in and amongst the blades of grass, not on top of the blades of grass, and that will just help protect the seeds a bit now that the weather is changing. So I'm going to put it on a time lapse because it is trying to rain and I need to get on with it. So we've got the Landsy spreader there. For me, that is my favourite tool of the moment. So let's just crack on. So you can just see with a couple of passes, the coverage is great. I like the coverage, it covers fairly evenly and fairly well. And there's got seed gone down the holes, and you can't really see, but there's compost on top. So that's done it the world of good. So I've just got a little bit around the edge I'm going to do by hand. Couldn't quite get the spreader up to that, unless I go in a different direction, but just going to do that bit by hand. And then I'm just going to put a couple more bags on just to even out any other bits. So that's it. Gone over a couple of times and we've got a decent coverage there. It's nice and thick. All the seeds are covered. You can't see any seeds, which is kind of important, really. And there's no harm in chucking a bit of extra compost on if required. You know, it's a couple of quid a bag in it, £2.50 a bag, something like that. So we'll get this cleared up. You can tip this out into a wheelbarrow if you want, but I'm just getting the bulk out. This, waste not, want not, absolutely perfect mulch. Stick that on your borders over winter. going to go with the roller now, nice and gentle. When we get to the end, we're not going to turn the roller because that will move the seeds and compost out of their position. So we just gently nudge it a little bit at a time. So you can watch how we do this. Especially more so on the bare areas. That is it. So I'm going to tidy up now. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes when I've cleared all that away, and I'm going to spray a wetting agent on the lawn and give it a good watering in. I'm going to get these tools away because it looks like it might rain and it's forecast for this afternoon. But overall, we scarified to remove all the rubbish out of the lawn, we aerated to relieve compaction in the ground and improve drainage. We've overseeded to get some nice new fresh seeds in, give it a new sense of life. And then we've top dressed for a couple of reasons. The compost gets into the ground, improves the ground just a little bit, especially if it's clay or sand. It works with both in different ways. If it's clay, it helps to get some organic stuff in there. If it's sandy soil, it helps to just hold a little bit of water in there rather than draining through really fast. And it's a covering as well for the seeds, stop the birds getting to it. And we've rolled it all in, so we've ensured good seed to soil contact, really important. So thanks for watching. If you like this, please smash that like button, please hit the subscribe, and you'll get more content like this. So I'm going to get tidied up, get these last few bits done, and we'll see you on the next one. So next we've got a wetting agent to apply. It's not actually necessary, especially as it's cooling down. It just helps to hold water around the roots, especially if watering can sometimes be inconsistent or the heat comes up quite high. But I like to put it on just so we ensure good success rates with what we do. So I'm going to get this sprayed on, give it a watering in, and then we're done. So if you can see that, it's like a little rain shower. It's nice and gentle. Just a nice mist of rain coming down. Don't ever point it down heavy with a heavy jet, because that will move some of the seeds. The water pressure is actually not very good here, so we're going to struggle to reach the far end. I'm just going to go and get my hose end attachment, and we'll see if we can get a bit further. Before we do that, See how far we can get with these. Well, that's reasonable. Again, we've got the nice mist coming down. So, how long should you be watering for? Well, you need to keep your seeds damp for the first 2 weeks. In autumn and in spring. In summer, we're talking 4 weeks. So really, first 2 weeks is the time it takes for it to start to germinate and come through. At that point, continue watering and just gradually start to taper off. Just gradually. Don't rush. So I would say you water your lawns for the first 4 weeks continuously, twice a day in spring and autumn. If it's in summer, 4 times a day. And you're aiming to keep the seeds damp. So you've got to keep coming out a couple of times a day at the moment and just giving it 5 or 10 minutes on a nice mist. In summer you've got to come out more often because it dries out quick. Once it's come through at about the 3 to 4 week mark, after it's come through, you can then start to reduce your watering from twice a day down to sort of 3 or 4 times a week, and then just gradually taper it off over there, because then we'll be hitting into winter and you don't need to water then. If it's summer, you've got to water for the rest of summer once it's come through, because the roots are shallow. So there you go guys, I'm going to crack on, I'm going to get this watered in, and we'll see you on the next one.